McGraw-Hill Ascent Audio presents The Work-Life Balance Myth, Rethinking Your Optimal Balance for Success by David J. McNeff, narrated by Emmanuel Chumaceiro. Publisher's note: in this audio edition, you will hear references to visual materials present in the print and ebook formats of the book. Peace is a daily, a weekly, a monthly process, gradually changing opinions, slowly eroding old barriers, quietly building new structures. John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Preface. He stood facing the window that overlooked the parking lot and the distant horizon. Leaning forward, shaking his head, he said, "I thought this was going to be the answer." Richard had been working for a large company on the West Coast for 18 years in a high-pressure executive position that required a great deal of travel and produced lots of stress. With two children, almost teenage and early teenage, that needed attention and love, Richard and his wife felt that his work-life balance, or rather, the lack of it, was hurting the family dynamic on several levels. When his father-in-law offered Richard the opportunity to come home to Kansas City to run his investment advisory firm, he quickly accepted. He and his wife thought that moving back near family and friends and working in a comfortable family business would allow them to finally achieve a healthy work-life balance and get out from under the blanket of suffocating stress. The first year went well for Richard and his family. They easily settled into their new home, and he learned the business while his father-in-law transitioned toward retirement. Then year 2 came along, and everything changed. After Richard took over the full reins of the business and his father-in-law retired to Florida, several clients left for competing investment firms. This, of course, put instant financial pressure on the business. Richard had to let go of some long-standing employees. Sensing trouble, a few of the most talented people in the firm moved on, leaving Richard with a bigger problem. He was still learning the business, and he could not afford to have more good people exit the firm, so he borrowed money to maintain some form of order and stability in the business. While all this was going on, his two children, ages 11 and 13, needed more attention. His eldest daughter was diagnosed with a learning disability, and his youngest daughter, who had struggled with the move to Kansas City 2 years ago, was having difficulty maintaining friends and was showing signs of depression. Providing both daughters with the support they needed was going to take a great deal of energy and effort from Richard and his wife. On top of all of this, Richard had lost his father a few months earlier, and now his mother, who had several serious health issues, was diagnosed with cancer and needed full-time care. She too needed more attention from Richard and his wife. All of this, all at once. So much for achieving a work-life balance. Richard's situation now made his prior life on the West Coast seem like a walk in the park in comparison. Almost every part of his life was thrust into chaos. If things didn't stabilize quickly, the consequences could be devastating. As the saying goes, welcome to my world. Stress and pressure impact all of us, no matter our walk of life, gender, or situation. In my consulting work, I see various versions of Richard's story all the time. I work with executive teams and often engage with people like Richard who find themselves overwhelmed by unusual circumstances. And just as often, I work with people and teams suffering from a lack of effective stress management. My role is to help people to develop their corporate executive skills and to find ways to reduce the impact of stress to become better executives and to lead more peaceful and fulfilling lives. In this book, I share the 7-slice method, a process that can help you disperse and diffuse your stress so that you stay grounded even when everything seems to go wrong at once. We'll discuss a number of people who have used the 7-slice method to dramatically improve their stress management and to reach a more harmonious state. The impetus for me in creating this method was the stress and pressure in my own life. It surfaced suddenly, or seemed to at the time. It seems surreal now, but more than 15 years ago, my life fell into a chaotic, bubbling mess. A divorce, a business slowdown, a financial struggle, and children in college combined to throw me into an intense and unrelenting state of stress. It seemed as though every day brought new surprise problems that seemed to have no possible solutions. This period lasted 20 months, which gave me plenty of time to figure out how I was going to find a way back to sanity. Like most people, I was quite familiar with the self-help and work-life balance messages in books and other places. But the situation was so dire, I felt I needed a permanent solution to my stress problem, once and for all. Trying to live with stress I felt every day was not sustainable. I started the process by seeking out and talking with experts in coping with life crises. Some of these conversations were extremely helpful, and some were quite frustrating. In particular, I felt frustrated with the people who used a standard playbook that sounded like a one-size-fits-all solution process. That was not going to help me very much. Suddenly, something clicked in my mind, and it became clear to me. I realized that several parts of my life were all impacted during this intense period of stress. And the solution was to identify those parts and deal with them both individually and as a part of a whole. All of us have 7 slices in our lives: our family slice, our professional slice, our personal slice, our physical slice, our intellectual slice, our emotional slice, and our spiritual slice. These all need to be served in some fashion, and in serving them, they in turn serve us. Meaning, if I could recognize and fully understand all 7 slices and put some effort and time into all of them, I would feel better and more balanced during stressful days. The solution worked for me. And since my clients were often going through varying degrees of stress and trauma, it made sense to introduce this method to them to see if it might take with them, as it had with me. And so I rolled out the 7-slice method 12 years ago. I held seminars a few times a year, and the results were very promising. Those clients who gave it a try all reported that it had a positive impact on their overall attitude and perspective. As time went on, I introduced the method to executive teams as a way to get ahead of stress and pressure when they knew difficult times lay ahead. Not only did these teams find it helpful, but in fact, many told me that they had taken it home to share with their spouses and partners. All had found it to be practical and, in many cases, enlightening. I observed that many people used the 7-slice method when they encountered stressful times, but would not think about it much when their stress level was more manageable. Others used the method consistently to reduce their day-to-day stress level with better control of their stress. Some people reported to me that they found time to learn new hobbies, and a few even learned new languages. Who knew? To be clear, the 7-slice method won't make the stressful elements of your life vanish. You will always be navigating one stressful life event or another, but the 7-slice method will calm you down so your ability to manage stress levels will improve very quickly. By being aware of these 7 slices, our slices come to our aid and breathe calm and peace inside us during unsettling moments of terrible and seemingly hopeless and unbearable life stress. Oh, I almost forgot. Richard embraced the 7-slice method when introduced to him, in part because he was desperate for any help at that point in his life. Though the tumult of his life continued for about a year and a half, he kept himself afloat well enough to survive without stumbling, which was critical since he was the anchor that both his business and family needed during that difficult time. Over time, and without panic, he restructured his business, and he provided his children with the extra attention and help they needed to move forward in a positive way. With treatment and assistance, his mother was able to recover and return to her healthy lifestyle. Richard claimed this method provided a practical way to find a sense of harmony in himself, so he could be there for those around him. Not quite a fairy tale ending, perhaps, but a positive end to a difficult story, for sure. As a final suggestion, it is probably best to listen to this book in chunks. There is a lot to listen to and think about in each chapter. Thinking about the ideas and how you can apply them to your situation is what will make the most difference for you in the long run. Listen to a chapter. Think about where you are today in each of the 7 slices, and then start to consider where you would like to be in that slice next week or next month. In working with people using this method, I've found that both an intellectual and emotional connection need to occur. First, we learn what it is and how to use it. And then, second, we need to believe and see the results. When this occurs, lasting and positive change in all 7 slices of your life will happen. The following quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson eloquently expresses what is my wish for you and all listeners of this book. Remember that nothing can give you peace but yourself. Introduction. For years, I have heard the same message again and again from my friends, colleagues, and clients. My company doesn't appreciate that we need work-life balance. I can't remember the last time I wasn't stressed. If you're a working professional, you've probably said the same thing at one point, and I'm sure you've encountered one of the myriad self-help books, systems, HR programs, etc., that promise you that work-life balance is the antidote to the stress that is keeping you up at night and negatively impacting your professional and personal relationships. This book is intended to reset that notion and propose that there is no possibility of balance in our lives. To chase balance between your work and family is futile. Instead, I offer a new way of contextualizing your life and managing your stress, the 7-slice method. The method suggests that all our lives contain the following 7 slices: the family slice, the professional slice, the personal slice, the physical slice, the intellectual slice, the emotional slice, the spiritual slice. The balancing act we are all trying to accomplish is unachievable because we are all actually living 7 different lives, or slices. The problem is that most of us are only pursuing 2. Busy professionals who juggle countless tasks, priorities, and pressures every day are particularly prone to ceding the other 5 slices of their lives. Their personal, physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual slices, just to keep up with the circumstances in their family and professional slices. Some people pick up 1 or 2 other slices through various random methods, but many live a life focusing on the 2 primary slices and leave the rest to chance. No wonder that for many people, the stress of family and work feels more acute than ever. It's become their entire world. That has consequences, and it's not healthy, to say the least. The consequences of unmanaged stress. Work-life balance may be a myth, but the problem it tries to solve, dealing with persistent stress, is very real. In fact, wanting to package this message in a book is a direct result of watching the impact that stressed-out lives have on each of us, even if we are not particularly stressed out ourselves. As someone who's often brought in to help executive teams deal with their interpersonal issues, I can speak directly to the damaging toll that stress can have on your career and your workplace. The temptation for people, particularly for ambitious and hardworking professionals, is to grit their teeth and tell themselves to just get through it. In many cases, I'll have a client in charge of an executive team tell me, "Yes, everyone's stressed out, but we're adults. We'll hang in there and just get through the next quarter." Most of the time, the client will call me shortly after to tell me that someone on the team snapped, made a terrible and often preventable error in judgment that financially impacted the firm, or angrily quit or that every meeting had dissolved into arguing and yelling. On a company level, stressed employees are more unhappy and less productive. On an individual level, if you are unable to keep your stress from taking over your life, both your personal and professional lives will suffer. Think back to a time in your life when you were extremely stressed, which might be right now. How did you treat the people around you? Were you able to be as patient, present, and open? Were you in the best mental place to problem solve, analyze, and make decisions? Probably not. This is unlikely to be a surprise to you. People can be perfectly pleasant, patient, and easy to get along with at their job or in their household when things are calm and easy. But when stress enters the picture, your sense of perspective shrinks. The things that are stressing you out become the center of your world. You become less patient and less available to the people you care about. You might be short or rude to your loved ones, or just less present with them. You become less able to feel and express gratitude and to appreciate the good things and good people in your life. You might even start to act out of step with the values you hold dear. For instance, you might stop noticing or caring about the feelings of others. The 7-slice method. What's in it for you? The 7-slice method won't change your circumstances. Your life will always have stress in it, both from things you can't change and from things that you can. What I have set out to do here is provide a process and a method to identify, understand, and leverage all 7 slices of your life. This will help you master the art and science of finding the time and patience to live, even if only briefly, in every part of your life. Again, the problem for most professionals is that they allow 2 slices, their family and professional slices, to dominate their lives. The 7-slice method reminds you that you have 5 other slices, and each can provide you a respite and perspective, without demanding a huge time commitment. Putting our lives in this slice context can have a tremendous impact on how we feel. My hope is that the message contained in this book will open a way for you to be more in harmony with yourself every day. I've helped clients successfully implement the 7-slice method for years. The wonder of this to me is that people who have decided to give this a try not only find comfort from the process, but have also declared that they are happier and more satisfied. "I feel lighter," is a response I often hear from clients. They stop seeing the stressors in their life as unfair and rather process them as events with a beginning, middle, and end. Those gifts of perspective are perhaps worth the effort alone. Moreover, more effectively managing your stress and accessing a mental state of relaxation and calm using the 7-slice method won't just make you feel better. It will also benefit the people around you, the people you love, care about, and work with. How to listen to this book. Each chapter in this book will illustrate how to recognize your stress sources and to use strategies to empower you to handle all kinds of stress and pressure by living in each slice, even if only for a few moments every day. In Part 1, Balance versus Harmony, we'll dive into the myth of work-life balance, introduce the 7 slices, explain the goal of the book, and show how you can reach a feeling of harmony. In Part 2, the 7-slice method, we'll take a deep dive into each of the 7 slices, including the components of each slice, signs that you may or may not be attending to each slice in a healthy way, common issues and ideas for how you can access an underserved slice, especially when you don't have any time to spare. At the end of each slice chapter, you'll find a case study that follows people who are fictional but based upon my real clients, who implemented the 7-slice method during a particularly challenging moment in their lives. Through the ups and downs of their journey, you can glean inspiration for your own. Part 3. Ensuring the 7 slices deliver harmony is where we put it all together. You'll learn how to tackle the 7-slice method on your own and to integrate your slices for a more consistent feeling of harmony, no matter what's going on in your life. Part 3 will also offer more case studies to give you pause and inspire you. Who will get the most out of this book? Since much of my practice involves working with executives and professionals, the stories in this book speak most directly to what people in those positions characteristically experience. However, as I mentioned in the preface, stress affects all of us regardless of our circumstances. Therefore, the 7-slice method is there for you no matter what your professional life looks like, or even if you are retired or going to school. Something I've noticed over the years is that many of my clients, either during or after they've implemented the 7-slice method, introduce the method to others. Many enjoy sharing the process with their partners, friends, and coworkers. For some, in fact, learning and practicing the 7-slice method with one or more people maximizes the impact and makes them more likely to stick with it. If you're someone who benefits from working with others, you may want to consider recruiting others in your 7-slice journey. In addition, by sharing the ideas in this book with your partner or spouse, he or she will likely support your efforts to live more harmoniously, and may even end up adopting the 7-slice approach, too, and you'll probably develop a better relationship as a result. An invitation to find harmony. In this book, I invite you to rediscover yourself, and once again, or for the first time, live your whole life. Here we go. Part 1. Balance versus harmony. Peace is a day-to-day problem, the product of a multitude of events and judgments. Peace is not an is, it is a becoming. Haile Selassie. Balance may be a myth, but harmony is achievable. Even when you feel as though every moment of your life is scheduled and you are under constant pressure, there can never be a balance if we only allow a couple of major slices to take up most of our time. But if we consistently invest in the other 5 slices of our lives, we will manage our stress and open the door to harmony, joy, and happiness. Chapter 1. Work-life balance was always a myth. 1 out of every 4 Americans is super stressed. Not just stressed, but super stressed. The causes include heavy workloads, family responsibilities, and relationships, other relationships, and difficulties in squeezing in outside interests. The latest research indicates that stress doubles our chances of contracting heart disease, exacerbates respiratory issues, and can cause or worsen a host of other ailments. The sad reality is that too many of us are super stressed to the point where it's making us sick. This state of being super stressed often creates 2 instant problems. We become more unhappy and we become less productive. Being unhappy and less productive, of course, makes us feel even more pressure and therefore more stressed. It can feel like a never-ending cycle. Anyone can handle a stressful day or a stressful week here and there, but many successful professionals live in a spiral that never seems to allow for escape. In fact, 76% of employees in the United States feel burned out at work, with 28% always feeling burned out. What's stressing us out? Since most people work to provide for themselves and their families, let's go over what people say is causing stress at work. 49%, low salaries. 43%, lack of opportunity for advancement. 43%, heavy workload. 40%, unrealistic job expectations. 39%, long hours. Now let's combine this with what people are feeling more broadly that is contributing to their sense of being overwhelmed. According to this same survey, here are the top 7 themes that are worrying Americans today. 71%, mass shootings. 69%, healthcare. 64%, work. 62%, current political climate. 60%, money. 60%, terrorism. 56%, climate change. To add one more log to this burning fire, Consider the findings of a Cigna Insurance Company survey of over 10,000 millennial and Gen Z workers. Both groups feel lonely and isolated at work. They said there is too much texting instead of talking, which they felt promoted more detachment in relationships, too many back-to-back meetings, and very little time for ad hoc interactions with coworkers. Like everyone else, millennials and Gen Z workers feel they are too busy and overwhelmed at the same time. What is important to keep in mind when digesting the current state of stress from a macro level is that all these issues are impacting individuals almost every day. Very simply, most people are experiencing high levels of stress, and many people are super stressed. Coping devices. Everyone needs a way to deal with acute stress. What are some of the strategies well-meaning people choose to handle stress when it begins to become overwhelming? In psychology, these strategies are called coping devices. They are the methods or processes people use to manage their stress. Examples of coping devices are exercise, meditation, psychotherapy, and other activities that reflect a commitment to take care of yourself. However, when everything seems to be hitting at once and people feel overwhelmed, they often feel they don't have the time to devote to their preferred coping device. Often they turn to unhealthy coping devices, such as too much food or alcohol, substance abuse or sex, gambling, pornography, or workaholism. A coping device allows you to stay in the slice that is taking its toll on your mental and physical health. Sometimes it's the family slice, sometimes it's the professional slice, and often it's both. When asked, many people who utilize a coping device, healthy or unhealthy, claim the device helped them to manage their anxiety and stress. In essence, coping devices allow a person to blow off steam in one or more slices of their lives. Unfortunately, when people have an unhealthy coping device, or they take their healthy coping device too far, instead of creating balance, the coping device actually adds to the dysfunction by introducing a new problem in the form of an addiction or obsession, which only adds to the stress and sense of imbalance in their life. Please understand, this is not a criticism. It is simply another example of why we need a consistent and proven way of managing our lives away from imbalance and toward harmony. To better understand our coping devices, we need to examine how they start. For most of us, our coping devices begin small and with no intention on our part that they will dominate our time or energy. That is important to remember. We all tend to live in the moment. It is part of the human condition. But in the moment lies the challenge, because in the moment lies the stress and the pain that we want to make go away. Since we don't like to remain in pain, we seek ways to numb our way through it. So we start off small with our coping devices. But over time, they tend to grow, become unmanageable, and introduce new problems into our lives. Let's take one example. Jerry, a CFO in his mid-40s, was starting to struggle. Life had been going along pretty well. Wonderful marriage, 2 great kids, a nice job, and lots of assets tucked away. Then, things began to unravel. The first tangible sign of trouble was tremors in his hands. If he held on to something with a firm grip, the tremors would stop. However, right after he would let go, the shaking returned. Not only was this annoying to him, it was also getting a bit embarrassing at the office. At home, his children were starting to ask why Daddy's hands shook all the time. As someone who was a social drinker, mostly on weekends, Jerry decided to see if a drink would help. And of course, it did. In some ways, it was a relief. But as you can guess, there were sudden trade-offs. Although Jerry didn't realize it at the time, the sudden hand tremors were the result of stress from a perfect storm of events that seemingly arrived all at once. The business that had been growing had suddenly stalled, in part due to a stress-driven decision he had made as CFO to forward future revenue into the current quarter. While the move worked in the short term, it led to a long-term problem. And when the long-term problem arrived, there was no more revenue to pull through.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?